An apartment fire is under arrest for murder. The details at 11 o'clock.
Gina Lola Brigida, 11:30 tonight.
The $1.50 a pound gassy stomach. The $10 no parking indigestion. The $1.29 heartburn.
The priceless stomach acid quencher. When you get acid indigestion, remember Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid. Take the excess stomach acid quencher, Rolaids, now also in spearmint.
No matter what you drive, you're looking for more miles per gallon. So for months, Firestone has been testing their steel radial 500s against their belted bias tires to prove how many more miles per gallon they can give you with their radials. Now Firestone has the facts and figures. So whatever you drive, small car, big car, or something bigger, find out how to get more miles for your money at Firestone.
There is a sports car that handles unlike any other car in this world. From snow mountains to hot deserts, winding roads to superhighways, city streets to racetracks. It gets about 24 or 29 miles per gallon. Porsche, there is no substitute.
You can be a tower of strength in a young man's life. Be a big brother. Call Big Brothers of Orange County at 544-7773. KNBC, Los Angeles. Good morning. This is the KNBC News Service sign-off edition for this Wednesday, the 20th day of March. The time now, 40 seconds past 2 a.m. In the news this morning, President Nixon authorizes gas stations to stay open on Sundays. We'll have the results of Los Angeles City Councilman Arthur Snyder's recall election, and two local scandals are making news, and British royalty and Hollywood impress each other. Here are the details. President Nixon is in Texas, and he addressed the National Association of Broadcasters Convention in Houston for an hour in a question-and-answer session. A few hours before the president appeared, Republican Senator James Buckley of New York urged the president to resign, and the president responded in answer to the first question.
Well, first, it does not cause me to reassess my position, although I, of course, do respect... I do respect the point of view expressed by the senator and by others, perhaps some sitting here who share that view. The point that I wish to make, however, is that when we speak of courage, if I could address that from a personal standpoint, first of all, it perhaps would be an act of courage to resign. I should also point out, however, that while it might be an act of courage to run away from a job that you were elected to do, it also takes courage to stand and fight for what you believe is right, and that's what I intend to do.
Governor Ronald Reagan said that resignation would be more disruptive than impeachment. Vice President Gerald Ford and Senator Barry Goldwater also voiced opposition to such a move. President Nixon answered questions regarding the economy, inflation, and the Middle East, but drew heaviest applause in his opening statement dealing with the end of the Arab oil embargo and the easing of the gasoline crisis.
First, it will not be necessary for us to have compulsory rationing in the United States. And second, effective this Sunday, I have rescinded the order which closes all service stations on Sunday. Third, Director Simon is increasing allocations to industry and agriculture so that they can have the necessary energy to operate at full capacity. And fourth, with regard to those gasoline lines which have troubled us in several places in the country, we will now be able to allocate additional gasoline with the purpose of diminishing the lines, and we hope eventually eliminating them.
President Nixon pointed out that gasoline prices will stay high because imported oil costs more than domestic oil. Standard Oil of California has already announced that from now on its 235 company-operated stations will be open on Sundays. This was in response to a plea from Governor Reagan, who complained that Sunday closing was fouling up the state's odd-even gasoline purchase program. The order to open on Sundays will affect about 90 Standard stations in the Los Angeles area. And there's another story affecting local transportation. The Rapid Transit District people have voted to accept financial backing for a 25-cent bus fare starting April 1st. The backing comes from the county supervisors after they have been assured that federal revenue-sharing funds can be used to finance the program. The flat 25-cent fare will take you anywhere in the county on a single bus. The request to appear on nationwide television made by 2 jailed members of the Symbionese Liberation Army has been turned down. Judge Sam Hall of Martinez, California, said he's afraid that such an appearance by Joseph Ramiro and Russell Little could make it impossible for them to receive a fair trial. They're charged with the murder of Oakland School Superintendent Marcus Foster. Randolph Hearst said he was disappointed in the judge's decision since Ramiro and Little had said that they would make suggestions for the release of his kidnapped daughter, Patricia.
But, Karen, good for you. $1,985. What a jackpot that is. Only 8 players left. Find that riddle. One. Could it be Ernest?
No, sorry. I'm worth $105.
All right, Ernest.
And this is my clue. I got plugged by a smart operator. Who am I? What am I? Sorry.
I got plugged by a smart operator. What am I?
A switchboard.
Yes, simple.
Don't buy by weight alone. It's the number of washings that count, and Snowy delivers 2 to 1.
Good morning, I'm Hughes Rudd. Our top stories today are on a senator's proposal, a president's answer, and a gassier Sunday. We'll be going to Houston in a couple of minutes to see and talk about some of the things President Nixon said there last night. We'll hear what one Republican senator has to say about the president and his problems. And speaking of problems, we'll see what the high price of rice is doing to a place where rice is a lot more than something just to throw at a wedding. It's all coming up this Wednesday, March 20th.
From the CBS Newsroom in New York, this is the CBS Morning News with Hughes Rudd.
President Nixon made another appearance on television last night, this time in Houston before a broadcasters convention, and he gave us all some good news. Gasoline stations will be allowed to stay open on Sundays from now on. Most of them have been closed voluntarily on Sunday. The president said American farmers have never had it so good, and we want to keep it this way because they won't produce unless they get a good price. He also said beef prices will remain high this fall, but that most food prices should come down a little later on. He said the United States is not only a friend of Israel, but a friend of Israel's neighbors as well. He said our European allies should consult with us instead of acting on their own, because such behavior raised the specter of a new sense of isolationism in this country. As for the specter of Watergate, the president said again he will not hand over those 42 tape recordings which the House Judiciary Committee wants for its impeachment investigation. Dragging on Watergate, he said, drags down America. And inevitably, he was asked about conservative Republican Senator James Buckley's suggestion that he resign as an act of courage.
Senator James Buckley today called for you to perform an extraordinary act of statesmanship and courage, voluntary resignation as he put it, the only way by which the Watergate crisis can be resolved. Would you comment on the import of this statement coming from a conservative United States Senator and whether it might cause you to reassess your position?
Well, first, it does not cause me to reassess my position, although I, of course, do respect... I do respect the point of view expressed by the senator and by others, perhaps some sitting here who share that view. The point that I wish to make, however, is that when we speak of courage, if I could address that from a personal standpoint, first of all, it perhaps would be an act of courage to resign. I should also point out, however, that while it might be an act of courage to run away from a job that you were elected to do. It also takes courage to stand and fight for what you believe is right, and that's what I intend to do.
In recent days, you have in effect attempted to define the limits of the House Judiciary Committee investigation, what evidence that they have access to. Now, since the Constitution, and I think without qualification, clearly assigns to the House of Representatives impeachment investigations, how can the House meet its constitutional responsibilities while you, the person under investigation, are allowed to limit their access to potential evidence?
Well, Mr. Rather, referring to the House of Representatives, just like the President, it is bound by the Constitution. The Constitution says specifically that a president shall be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. It is the Constitution that defines what the House should have access to and the limits of its investigation. I am suggesting that the House follow the Constitution. If they do, I will.
Following on my colleague Mr. Rather's question, you have referred here again tonight, as you have in the past, about what you call the precedents of past presidents in withholding White House material from the House Judiciary Committee. But other presidents protecting the confidentiality of their conversations were not the subject of impeachment investigations, Mr. President. And in fact, many of them wrote that the House Judiciary Committee, at least Congress, had the right to demand White House materials in the course of the impeachment investigation. And history shows that Andrew Johnson gave up everything that the Congress asked him for when he was the subject of an impeachment investigation. So, Mr. President, my question is this: aren't your statements to that matter historically inaccurate or at least misleading?
Mr. Brokaw, it is true, as you say, that the only other president who was exposed to an impeachment investigation was Andrew Johnson. And insofar as that particular part of your question is concerned, you are correct. However, insofar as the principle of confidentiality is concerned, that principle still stands, and it affects an impeachment investigation as well as any other investigation. Because in the future, if all that a Congress under the control of an opposition party had to do in order to get a president out of office was to make an unreasonable demand to go through all of the files of the presidency, a demand which a president would have to refuse, then it would mean that no president would be strong enough to stay in office to resist that kind of demand and that kind of pressure. It would lead to instability, and it would destroy, as I have indicated before, the principle of confidentiality.
Incidentally, the President's answer to Dan Rather's question came after they'd engaged in a little back-and-forth persiflage, which we've cut out of the tape. The Associated Press took a poll of some senators after Senator Buckley called for Mr. Nixon's resignation, and they came up with these figures. 39 senators say the president should not resign. 17 say he should. 33 senators declined to say anything, which must be a record of some sort. And 11 other senators couldn't be contacted, which isn't a record. But we'll be back with some discussion about the president's latest public appearance right after this.
The time now, 7 minutes past the hour.
You can bounce it, you can break it, you can stretch it, you can make it into all kinds of silly-looking shapes and mold it into crazy-looking animals.
Isn't that silly?
It's Silly Putty. Flatten Silly Putty into a pancake and press it down on a picture in a newspaper or a comic strip. And look, it picks up the picture in full color. Stretch it, and you make a silly picture even sillier. Silly Putty comes in a shell shaped like an egg. Nothing else is Silly Putty.
When you got him a comet chainsaw, you've got power by the hour in your hand. With McCog, you're the master, 'cause you keep a cutting faster. You're in luck when you got him a comet chainsaw.
$29.95. McCulloch.
Most of the people in that give and take with President Nixon last night in Houston usually don't get to see the president any more than most of us do, which means on television. But some of the sharpest questions last night came from the people who are with Mr. Nixon regularly, the White House press people. And some of them are with us right now down in Houston at KHOU-TV, and they're our own Dan Rather, Robert Pierpoint, and a couple of guests, Elizabeth Drew of the New Yorker Magazine and Fred Zimmerman of the Wall Street Journal. Good morning, all. Oh, dear. Well, clearly we're having some trouble between here and Houston. We'll try for them again later. Here's another look at the news, meanwhile. The first of the 1974 primaries was held yesterday in Illinois, and Democratic Senator Adlai Stevenson ran away with the nomination for another term. His Republican opponent, as a result of the primary, will be George Burdett, a lawyer and businessman. In a congressional race, Robert McClory, one of the Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee, which is looking into impeachment, was an easy winner over Edward Vass, a former policeman. Chrysler Motors has announced a price increase on its 1974 model cars. The increase averages 0.7%, or about $28 a car. Even though no one is being drafted right now, the draft system is still working, and today there'll be another lottery to determine who will be called first if the draft is resumed. This lottery is for men born in 1955. The South Vietnamese military command says a government-controlled hamlet in the Mekong Delta has been overrun, and according to Saigon, 18 persons have been killed. Israel has ordered all civilian traffic off the roads in the Golan Heights, a sign the Israeli military command expects the 9th consecutive day of artillery duels with Syria. Tom Fenton has a report on the previous 8 days and tells us what it's all about.
The Syrian guns opened fire first. Israeli gunners held their fire for half an hour. Then prepared to reply with a counter-barrage of all calibers, including the long-ranging 175s. They pounded positions deep inside the Syrian lines in the direction of Damascus. Syrian fire was first directed at the northern end of the salient captured by Israeli forces in the October War. Shells rained down on Israeli positions in the abandoned Syrian town of Mazrat Datjan. There were Israeli casualties as the exchanges ranged over most of the front throughout the day. Some Israeli batteries were forced to shift their positions. The Israelis described it as the most concentrated shelling since the war. It now appears to the Israelis that the Syrians are waging at least a limited war of attrition, with the aim, apparently, of pressuring Israel into a speedy disengagement from territory captured in the past 2 wars. The Syrians lost one means of pressure when most of the Arab oil-producing countries agreed to lift the oil embargo against the United States. There are no signs that military pressure will be any more effective. Prime Minister Golda Meir repeated again this week that Israeli troops may withdraw from the territory captured in the October War, but will remain on the strategically important Golan Heights captured in the Six-Day War. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Israel.
And we'll be back right after this.
The time now, 12 minutes past the hour.
My family came over in the Mayflower, a shakedown cruise, of course, so I know what a job it is to feed a large family. I wish Mumsy had known about these delicious dishes. Lasagna, chili macaroni, chuck wagon stew. Might I see a label? Wouldn't you know? Hamburger booster dinners from Globe A1. Serve 6. Just add hamburger. How nice. Globe A1 gives you so much more for your money.
Uh-oh.
The automatic transmission in your bright, beautiful Olds is on the blink, and he thinks you look like lunch. AMCO has serviced over 300,000 Oldsmobiles, 3 million automatic transmissions in all. More proof nobody knows your automatic transmission better than AMCO. AA MCO.
This announcement was brought to you by the AMCO dealers of Southern California. See the yellow pages or white pages for the address of an AMCO center nearest you. Oh yes, they're open Saturdays.
Montgomery Ward's big enameled steel cabinet is sale priced now at just $24.88. Ward's handy base cabinet fits anywhere, and it's sale priced today at just $29.88. This 5-foot steel wardrobe is budget priced at just $34.88. And perfect to store all of your extra clothes. And Ward's beautiful Mediterranean wardrobe is only $49.88. Hurry, sale ends Sunday at Montgomery Ward.
For longer, stronger, more beautiful nails, get Maginail Grow, Maginail Polish Remover, and Instant Strengths Glaze Guard to prevent peeling and breaking. Also, the original and often imitated Maginail Brush On Kit for nail biters or nails that break or split. Now create long, beautiful nails more natural than your very own. Maginail products are available wherever fine cosmetics are sold. Ask for and insist upon quality for your nails. That's Maginail.
We're going to make another attempt at the electronic wizardry and try to go down to KHOU-TV in Houston, where our own Dan Rather and Robert Pierpont are waiting, along with Elizabeth Drew of the New Yorker Magazine and Fred Zimmerman of the Wall Street Journal, waiting very patiently. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Hughes. I think the humidity got some of our wires here out of Houston. Bob Pierpont, in your judgment, what was the most important point in last night's news conference?
Well, I think what the president was attempting to do is fairly obvious. He was attempting to gain support for his view that Watergate is not going to take him out of office, that he is an active, effective president, and he wants the public to gather support for him and in turn pressure the Congress so that it won't vote impeachment. Now, whether he picked up any points last night is, I suppose, debatable. He seemed to be in a very friendly audience. He made a number of cracks at the press, which the audience seemed to enjoy and appreciate. There were several questions that he did not answer. He did not, for instance, say what happens if the House issues a subpoena for materials that he has refused to give them. Will he honor the subpoena? He did not really clarify what John Dean told him on March 21st about the hush money payments and what he did about it. But generally speaking, I thought he came across as a strong, determined man who will not resign from office, who will stay and fight it out.
Elizabeth Drew, journalist, commentator, currently writing a series of articles for the New Yorker, experienced Washington reporter. What are the dynamics underway now, in your judgment, between the president and the House Judiciary Committee?
Well, Dan, he's carrying out a rather deadly struggle with the committee. And on this platform, as he did in Chicago, what he's doing is defining in his terms what the committee is doing. He talks about the committee sending out, last night he had a new one, sending up a U-Haul trailer for all the material that it wants. He talks about the huge amount of material it's asked for, fishing licenses, hunting licenses, and so on. The committee has, on a bipartisan basis, made a very specific request for certain material it thinks is necessary. The president is asserting that this would be too much, it would damage the presidency, and he has not flatly said he wouldn't turn it over, but he's indicated that he wouldn't. At the same time, he's saying that the committee should hurry up in its study because to drag out Watergate is to drag down America. I think we're going to be hearing more about that. On the other hand, he's saying that they should study the material before he gives it to them. And one of the real questions is whether this tactic is going to work. One will be in the form of public opinion, whether he will be able to make his point. The other will be legally. Perhaps he will be able to continue to hold out this material and block a full impeachment inquiry. Then I don't know what happens.
Fred Zimmerman with the Wall Street Journal. Two-pronged effort by the president, one to influence public opinion, the other to have an effect on Congress. Your estimate of how successful he is at the moment in the wake of these hurried travels around the country, and in particular last night's performance?
I think it's right, Dan, that he is addressing two audiences now, the public on the one hand and Congress on the other, which soon will be voting on his future. in terms of the public, I suspect that what he did last night might have come across well. He was able to tell them they'll be able to get gas on Sunday now, and he was very forceful and perhaps pretty compelling and appealing on the resignation question. But I wondered to what extent any of this really matters anymore. It seems to me probable that the people who matter in Congress, and also a huge segment of the public, has already pretty well made up its mind on this thing, and that we're kind of in a polarized situation right now, and the thing is kind of on the track, and perhaps there's very little he can do anymore.
One point perhaps we should mention that the President did reduce a bit his antagonistic language toward nations of Western Europe, at least a little backing off from his position up this past Friday. But back to the Watergate matter and where the House Judiciary Committee is and the Senate. Elizabeth Drew, what would be the effect, in your judgment, of Senator James Buckley's announcement of yesterday? Now, the President said last night, in effect, it is not going to have any effect on me.
Well, he makes a very strong argument against resigning, and says that instead of that would weaken the presidency, that a president shouldn't resign because they're low in the polls or because charges have been made. And I can't have any disagreement with that. Of course, Watergate is not a question of just being low in the polls or charges being made. But the president said the real process, there is a process in the Constitution, it's called impeachment. And I felt he did not give an answer to your question last night, which is, what are you going to do if the person being investigated tries to draw limits around what is being investigated and the material he's going to turn over? Now, the Congress can't go down and arrest him. It doesn't have as large an army as he does. And if he does, in fact, insist on holding out on what they consider to be critical material, no matter what public opinion says or what, it could really hold up this process. And he, as you pointed out, he has said, I have given them everything that the special prosecutor got. But he gave the special prosecutor some things they did not want, and there's a great deal that the special prosecutor needed, not just in the Watergate break-in and cover-up. There are a lot of subjects in this whole area that they have not gotten, having to do with the plumbers and a lot of other cases, too. So he could really, in effect, draw a line on his own investigation.
It seems to me, Dan, that what the president is doing, in a sense, is addressing almost the wrong audience, because these are complex issues, many of them legal issues, which the average person or even the average reporter doesn't quite follow and understand. But the congressmen on that House Judiciary Committee are all lawyers. They understand very well what the president is saying, and they further understand when he refuses to cooperate with them. And it seems to me what is happening is that while the public may be to some extent convinced by what the president says and does in these trips around the country, that in fact he is losing the most important audience, that is the Republicans or the conservatives on the Judiciary Committee and in the House themselves. That is, those men who are going to have to vote the crucial issues are listening to him and watching him, and from what I've been able to learn, they're increasingly disenchanted, and the chances for impeachment are going up every day.
Fred Zimmerman, the president, as I understand it, still has not answered the basic question of why he has told at least two different stories about what happened in the now famed March 21st so-called hush money meeting. Is that a fair assessment, and how important is this going to be?
Well, I think it is true. This thing can get incredibly complicated, but what he seems to be saying in Chicago on Friday and again tonight is that he wished he had used a word like alleged rather than told. Well, all right, if we accept his new word, alleged, what we're still left with is that in August he said that John Dean had come into him on March 21st and alleged that these payments had been made for attorney fees and child support, to their family support to the original defendants, and not for the purpose of keeping him still. That's story A. Story B is that on March 6th he says that John Dean alleged to him that the payments had been made to keep them quiet. So the discrepancy between his two accounts of that crucial meeting still remain, and nothing he said last night cleared it up for me.
And also, it seems to me there's one other big issue. That is, whatever he learned on March 21st, what did he do about it?
Right.
That, it seems to me, is a very crucial point. Because if he, in fact, did learn even that there was an allegation of hush money payments, he should have been doing something about it.
Elizabeth Drew, the president continues to say that there is no recession, there isn't going to be a recession this year. Now, you talk to a lot of economists. Is it now the prevailing view that we're already in a recession? Certainly there are some who say that, the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, for example, but would you say that that's the predominant view of economists?
Well, I think you're overestimating the number of conversations I have with economists. The economists seem as confused about what's happening as everybody else, and that's been one of the problems, is the economists don't really know how to predict this thing or much how to deal with it. We've been in an unprecedented situation of the inflation, recession, etc. I don't know anybody who thinks it's looking very good or going to get better, and I think I talk to more people than economists, not that they're necessarily not the same thing, and I don't know that anybody feels that the economy is better, and to the extent that it's the public that's watching, I don't know that they're persuaded by what the president says.
Fred Zimmerman, what can we expect to see from President Nixon in the upcoming weeks? Do you think he'll continue this process of hopscotching around the country?
Well, I don't know. As you know, we don't get much advance warning on these things, and I would be a little surprised if he continues it because I'm at a loss to know what would be served by, another one of these in 2 or 3 days, the way we just had one Friday in Chicago. It seems to me that he basically is saying about the same thing each time now, and I think it's conceivable that maybe he'll cool it for a few days.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him go overseas on some travel within the next couple of months. Would you say a stop in 1 or 2 European capitals, London and Bonn, then down to the Middle East? Would you be surprised to see that?
Well, the Europe thing is really a question in my mind. I'm not sure where we're left after what we've gone through with his statement about the Atlantic Alliance the last couple of days, but I think perhaps in domestic terms he might like to get out of the country and do the tour a little and show the public and Congress that he's a viable statesman, and so maybe he will try that.
We do have the trip to the Soviet Union, which they're trying to arrange for June, I guess. That would be, in a sense, a plus for him if he could go there and sign another nuclear treaty of some kind to restrict nuclear weapons.
Excuse me, our time is up. Elizabeth, for Fred Zimmerman, Elizabeth Drew, my colleague Bob Pierpoint, Dan Rather in Houston. Hughes.
Thank you very much, all.
Joan Crawford, Robert Stack, and Polly Bergen star in The Caretakers tonight.
This is the Regina electric broom vacuum cleaner, perfect for everyday quick cleaning. It's so lightweight and has so many fabulous features it almost makes vacuuming pleasant. It's got this exclusive rug pile dial that adjusts to any height carpet and bare floors, too. With this handy dirt cup, I never spend a penny on dust bags. And this power suction edge is something special. Cleans along walls and hard to get at corners. The Regina electric broom. It's so nice to have around the house.
Acupuncture for Animals, a special report on the news at 6.
From New York, this is NBC News with Edwin Newman.
My one-a-day girl loves the outdoors as much as the kids do. And she's smart, too. She knows most women need extra iron. To be sure she gets it, the only thing she trusts is one-a-day brand multiple vitamins plus iron. 10 vitamins plus iron. All the extra iron most women need to help stay healthy. So she's a one-a-day girl. Shouldn't you be a one-a-day girl, too? One-a-day girl.
Good afternoon. Chet Huntley died this morning. He had been undergoing treatment for cancer for some months, and he had been operated on in January. He was 62. His death was announced by his wife, Tippy, at their home in Bozeman, Montana. For those of us at NBC, Chet Huntley's death is, of course, more than just news. He was a big part of our lives, as he was of the life of this country. He was our anchor man, and for many of us, he was a friend. NBC Nightly News will devote a part of its program tonight to Chet Huntley, and Frank McGee will have something to say about Chet on the Today program tomorrow morning. Lawyers for H.R. Haldeman today went into court to keep the Watergate grand jury report on President Nixon from going to the House Judiciary Committee. On Monday, Judge John Sirica said he would pass the report to the House Committee. Sirica allowed 2 days for appeals against that by President Nixon or by defendants in Watergate cases. Haldeman is a defendant. His lawyers said that giving the report to the Judiciary Committee might lead to its being made public.
If that happened, Haldeman's lawyers said, news organizations will not hesitate to evaluate the alleged facts, and the defendants will stand convicted before their stories are told. Haldeman's appeal went to the Court of Appeals in Washington. When that court will act on it has not been indicated. President Nixon's friend, Bebe Rebozo, testified in closed session this morning before the Senate Watergate Committee. Rebozo is being questioned about a contribution of $100,000 by Howard Hughes to the Nixon re-election campaign. The FBI announces that it has recovered $190,000 of the $200,000 paid to the kidnappers of Eunice Kronholm, the wife of a banker in St. Paul, Minnesota. The money was found in the garage of a house in Burnsville, Minnesota, where the FBI says Mrs. Kronholm was being held captive. In Indianapolis Airport today, a man went to the TWA counter, held a knife to the throat of a woman ticket agent, and demanded $1 million and an airliner. A security guard shot the man dead. The ticket agent was cut by the knife, but apparently not seriously injured. It's announced that in 1973, the American balance of payments, the excess of exports over imports, was $1.2 billion. That's in contrast to a deficit of almost $10 billion in 1972. The Soviet Union says that one of its helicopters lost its bearings last Thursday and landed in the Chinese province of Xinjiang. The Soviet news agency says the incident was reported to the Chinese, and they were asked to see that the helicopter and its crew of 3 were located and returned, but so far the Chinese have not replied. Police in Northern Ireland today accidentally shot and killed 2 British soldiers and wounded 2 others. Evidently, the police mistook the soldiers for terrorists. Edwin Newman, NBC News, New York.
Coffee?
Yes, please.
Sugar?
Nope.
Cream?
Nope.
Caffeine?
Of course, I want real coffee. Hey, wait a minute.
What?
That's caffeine?
Mm-hmm.
I thought caffeine was dark and rich like coffee.
No, it's white and bitter like a bitter pill. And it does nothing good for the taste of coffee.
Oh, it is bitter. What's it doing in coffee?
It's keeping you up at night.
What if I don't want it?
Well, then you don't have to have it. Get some decaffeinated coffee.
Do you what? I don't think I remember that.
Just remember decaf.
From New York, this has been NBC News with Edwin Newman.
Joan Crawford, Robert Stack, and Polly Bergen star in The Caretakers tonight.
Are you fed up with today's food prices?
Does a lot of the government shopping, is asking for bids on 10,000 lawnmowers, which must be 50% quieter than current models. The National Bureau of Standards has been asked to help the manufacturers figure out how to make quieter mowers, and the Commerce Department says we're all going to benefit from this. Well, now, for some reason or other, it doesn't seem to have occurred to anybody in Washington that generations of Americans cut the grass with hand lawnmowers, which didn't use gas and oil, didn't spurt out smelly fumes, and which made a pleasant whirring sound that was one of the nicest things about summer afternoons, unless you were the young boy doing the pushing. But even so, it wasn't all that bad. You could daydream when you pushed an old-fashioned mower, the kind that made this country great. If you daydream behind a power mower, you're liable to lose a limb or turn the garden hose into plastic confetti. All this mad, unthinking over-reliance on powered gadgets is supposed to be a big reason for the energy crisis, according to the government. And yet, here's the government passing up a splendid opportunity to do away with a whole passel of powered gadgets. The Arabian oil ministers must be laughing their heads off. But then, of course, they don't have much of a front lawn problem in places such as Saudi Arabia, although we do understand they have quite a lot of grass out there.
The time now exactly 32 minutes past the hour. This is CBS.
You see it all over. Red Carpet Realtors, sign of integrity. The reason is what Red Carpet puts behind their sign. Each representative is trained in real estate financing, property evaluation, and merchandising techniques. Each has the benefit of Red Carpet's referral system between more than 500 offices coast to coast. To buy, sell, or trade property, talk to Red Carpet. Call your information operator for the office nearest you.